Hey, I'm Jumpy. I've had a few people ask me about the origin of that nickname. I got it from the main character of the video game 999. 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. His name is Junpei, and his childhood friend calls him Jumpy. 999 is the first game in the Zero Escape trilogy. The stories in those games are wonderful. All I'll say is that the first game is about 9 people who are kidnapped and wake up on a sinking ship. They have 9 hours to find a door with the number 9 on it and escape. The premise definitely feels like a Saw movie, but it ends up in a completely different place. The Zero Escape games are visual novel hybrids. A lot of the times, you're just reading and watching the story play out. Every once in a while, you enter a door and find an escape room. You solve puzzles inside to seek a way out. I've never been to a real-life escape room, but I love Zero Escape, and I'm a fan of the Saw movies, so another movie series with some similarities to those two is going to catch my interest. That's where the escape room duology comes in. The first escape room film was released in 2019. The movie is about 6 characters who all receive a mysterious puzzle box. Inside, they find an invitation to a series of Minos escape rooms and the chance to win $10,000. They accept, go to the place, and quickly realize that the game is real and that they can be hurt or even killed by the escape rooms. There's a lot that I liked about this film. It looks nice, and it's stylish with its camera movements and shots. One in particular that I enjoyed is when a character stops before going into a vent shaft, and it's filmed from inside the vent. Then the camera either zooms out or moves backwards further down the vent. It's not the most original shot, but it was effective. I also like the character dynamics, seeing how they clash and work together. There's Danny, who's done way too many escape rooms and is totally into it, which is funny. Next is Zoe, a shy college student who's really into her studies, and she has to speak up for herself and go outside her comfort zone. We also have Jason, a stockbroker who is very determined to win and fights with the others. And who can forget Ben, who works in a grocery store? Amanda, who's named after a character from Saw, and Mike, the truck driver. Most of the escape rooms themselves are really interesting, and my favorite is the inverted room. There's some good tension throughout the movie, but that was where it was the strongest for me. The humor works for the most part, and there are some good throwaway lines scattered throughout the movie. There are some twists along the way. Nothing blew me away, but I was fine with them. I don't have too many bad things to say about this movie, and none of them are big gripes. The last escape room was a little weak compared to the others. Also, there's a confrontation at the end that is a little silly. I didn't like how it was handled, and I wish that a character had found out some of the information on their own instead of being told it. I know a lot of movies do this. It usually doesn't bother me, and this definitely isn't the worst example of this that I've seen. It's very minute overall, but it's worth a mention. This all adds up to a fun little movie. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's great, but much like Evil Dead Rise, I can see myself throwing this one on again and enjoying it. Right after I finished watching the first escape room movie, I started the sequel, Escape Room: Tournament of Champions. I gotta keep this vague because I don't want to spoil anything from the first movie in case you're checking out this video before seeing either film. Escape Room 2 was released in 2021, which was 2.5 years after the first one. You can figure out the plot pretty easily from the movie's title. There's another series of escape rooms, and the participants this time around are people who have already won a previous set of escape room challenges. I really like this premise. Yes, both the Saw series and the Zero Escape series have had characters returning in a sequel for some more traps and puzzles. But what's cool here in Escape Room 2 is that nobody in the movie is new to the Minos escape rooms themselves. When they find out they're in another game, they already know how serious the stakes are. That is a nice contrast to the first movie when they all think it's just for fun at the start. However, once it gets going, it's pretty much more of the same, which is not a bad thing. There's a sequence very early on in the movie that looks like it was done in one take. There's probably some hidden cuts where the camera whip pans, but who cares? It's very thrilling. My favorite escape room is the bank, and there's one moment in that scene that is executed so perfectly. I love it. I don't think there were any weak escape rooms in this, unlike the first one. I think it was a little less funny than the first, but it still had some good moments where I laughed. Unfortunately, I like the characters and their dynamics in the first one more. They didn't clash as much here in the sequel, which makes sense since they've all been through it before. There are still some decisions that characters make that the others don't like, but it didn't have the same impact that the first one had. And now we get to my biggest problem with the movie, which is the very end. I liked the ending up until that point, but not only did I think it was obvious what was going to happen, I also just didn't like where it went. So I was sitting there hoping I was wrong and that they'd do something else, which made it worse when it actually happened. This brought the movie down a little for me, but not too much. Except there's something else I need to talk about. What I just described is the theatrical cut of the movie. As soon as I finished watching that version, I watched the alternate extended cut of the movie. Yes, that means I spent 4.5 hours watching escape room movies in one night. So what? The extended version is about 8 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, but they didn't just add scenes. It has a significantly different opening and ending that replaces what's in the theatrical version. I like the alternate opening. It introduces new characters, including one played by the orphan from the Orphan movies. It also has a part that reminded me of the film 247 Degrees Fahrenheit, which is always the best thing a movie can do, making me think of that. And it even manages to get hotter, if you can believe that. I will say that there are some things in the theatrical opening I really liked, and they're missing from the extended opening. It makes sense for the narrative, but I'm still a little sad to see them go. The middle of the movie is the same as far as I could tell. It felt a little faster, but I think that's because I had just watched those same scenes 90 minutes earlier and knew how they were going to play out. Then we get to the ending. To repeat what I said earlier, the theatrical ending is good until the very end. The alternate ending has a slightly better lead up to me. It's completely different, and I think what they went with here is a little more interesting. But the very end is a lot better just because I didn't dislike it, and I'm happy with how it plays out. Between the two versions, I prefer the extended cut. If you choose to watch the extended cut yourself, when you're finished, I definitely recommend checking out the theatrical opening, and then fast forwarding to the ending for a comparison. Despite favoring the extended cut, I'm going to give both versions a 6 out of 10. I didn't mind watching them back to back. Even though I have criticisms, I don't dislike the theatrical ending quite enough to lower its rating to a 5, because I do like the rest of it. Neither version is as good as the first movie, but the extended cut isn't too far below it. I really enjoyed this series, and you can make a good double feature of it some evening. Thank you so much for watching.